Wake up, everyone. It's time for a call to action. Welcome to Call to Action today, where there are no sacred cows, with your host, Steve Noble, just an ordinary man who believes in an extraordinary God, and he's calling you out every week to live the Christian life in your home, your work, and even in politics. Call Steve now at 866-34-TRUTH. Or check him out online at c2atoday.org. And now, with some much-needed cough medicine for the church, here's your host, Steve Noble.
Well, it's good to be with you. Here we are on a Monday. A lot of things to talk about. And as we do every Monday, some Mondays, most Mondays, we do a Money Monday update with our friend David Fisher from Landmark Capital today, a full show. We have a lot of things to talk about, and I know sometimes you're like, Steve, this isn't exactly my thing, the whole money thing and finances and stuff. Let me remind you, and I hope you had a good weekend, and Merry Christmas to you. Let me remind you of a couple things that Jesus talked a lot about money, which is why we do. That's why we include it regularly. 16 of the 38 parables were concerned with how God handles money and possessions. In the Gospels, an amazing 1 out of 10 verses, 288 in all, deal directly with the subject of cha-ching, money. The Bible offers 500 verses on prayer, less than 500 verses directly on faith, but more than 2,000 verses on money and possessions. It is something that we all deal with, that most of us struggle with, that we wish we had more of and we were better managers of. And so we need to consider a lot of different issues that are out there in the financial marketplace and what's going on in the world. And whether it's here in the United States and whether it's with the federal government or the stock market or Bitcoin, we're going to talk about Bitcoin a little bit today, or what's going on overseas. It's a very complicated world between the markets and between banking and between governments. Very, very difficult for us. And I think most of us in the olden days would just kind of, buy and hold, and you just get stuff and 401k and some mutual funds. You don't even know what's in there. But things are just way too complicated and interconnected around the world these days. So we need someone to help us through, and also the notion of precious metals, gold and silver. I used to hear all that stuff and still do. Glenn Beck, all of a sudden 1-800 blah 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 blah, and he's always pushing gold and food supply and guns and gun safes and all that stuff. And so, if you're anything like me, when I first started hearing gold stuff on the radio several years ago, I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I met David Fisher from Landmark Capital, and I was skeptical at first because that's my job, to be skeptical on your behalf here on the radio show here on Call to Action Radio. And, we spent hours talking back and forth on the phone before he was ever on the show, and David was already doing a lot of radio. But here I feel like I have a brother in Christ obligation to you guys. So spend a lot of time getting to know David first and his background. He was a youth pastor and loves the Lord. He's our Christian brother. But then also trying to learn about precious metals, and then finding David's expertise in the markets, financial markets in general, as well as banking and international things, because they all show up in the stock market. They also show up and have an impact on precious metals, which is kind of the other side of the teeter-totter when it comes to our finances. So that's when we started doing radio together, which was a couple years ago. And so we kind of built it right into the radio show when we do Money Monday updates. But then the first Monday of the month, which today is, we do a full show with our friend David Fisher from Landmark Capital. David, that was the longest introduction ever. Merry Christmas. Welcome back.
Merry Christmas. I think last time I checked, tithing was paid with money, and so were Christmas presents. So
last time I checked.
Last time I checked. Maybe it's going to be Bitcoin in the future. I don't think so, though.
Yeah.
But anyway.
We'll find out. We'll talk about that. But it's great to have you here, and we've got a lot to go through. Of course, we were all paying attention over the weekend, David, to what was going on in the Senate. And they managed late last night to get this tax reform bill passed. Now it's already in conference between the Senate and the House. So what do you think is going to happen there, and why does it matter to us as investors?
Well, I think it's going to pass. I think it's just a matter of time. And I think, President Trump, when he says we're going to have a big present for Christmas called a tax bill, it's not going to be the biggest in history, although he's touting it as that. It has a lot of opinions put to it. The House and the Senate need to meet together because they're not far apart. They're really close. There are about 4 or 5 things that they're slightly differencing in. I think it's going to be a good thing for the wealthy, and then there's mixed emotions upon the middle income. My opinion of the bill is, I think we missed the bullseye. and the bullseye was to help the middle class. It's not a middle-class tax bill, although middle-class people, some will benefit from it and some won't.
Well, how do we even define middle class these days, David? What is a middle class person?
They say, according to the government, the person who makes $56,000 is a middle class person per household. So I think that's more like closer to lower income than what the government says middle income. So I would say it's a person who the household makes $100K or something like that. That would be a middle income person, or 75 to 100.
Yeah, so that's a kind of upper middle class, and then you get into the upper class and all the tax structure and everything else. And I agree, they tend to overpromise and underdeliver. That's like part of their job description, being on Capitol Hill. But as it gets compromised and we go through the reconciliation process between the House and the Senate, which I think politically they're going to really want to get this done before Christmas. That looks good for them, even though this bill is like a piece of Swiss cheese and it's got all kinds of holes in it. But do you think it will bring any significant fuel into the market? I mean, it's been an amazing year on the market. I mean, just go. It's up and still in record territory. But will this dump even more fuel on that fire?
Nobody really knows the percentage of what's factored in. I think a huge percentage is already factored in the market. It's close to euphoria compared to, think about it this way. We've had 11 consecutive months in a row of a gain in the S&P 500. That's never happened in the history of the world.
Wow.
So of our country. So to say that it's going to add more to this, I don't know how much more you would want to add. That would create it, in not a real market. It would become a just something so volatile you wouldn't want to be involved in it. So I think we're not going to see a big boost from this, but I think it's going to continue the longevity of it is what I think will happen. So it's going to add from that standpoint.
Yeah, and you go back December 7th, go to Pearl Harbor Day, go back to December 7th last year, and the market was at about, I'm looking at it right, 19,549, and today right now it's at 24,290. I mean, it's been an amazing year. And we're going to talk about a lot of other things, but real quick, David, how has the precious metals tracked along with the Dow and the NASDAQ and all of that in the regular market?
Well, I said at the beginning of this year on your program, we're going to be in two bull markets, and we have been doing that. Gold is almost 11% up year to date, and stocks are a little bit over 21%. So we have two bull markets happening. Stocks are leading the charge.
Yeah, which is abnormal. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. You mentioned that earlier. The debt ceiling, of course, is here again. And then the PetroYuan, what's going on with Saudi Arabia and China that could affect all of us. This is Steve Noble on a Money Monday with David Fisher from Landmark Capital. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's Steve Noble. It's Call to Action Radio. It is a full Money Monday with our good friend David Fisher from Landmark Capital. For more information or more education, you can contact them at landmarkgold.com is their website, landmarkgold.com, or 844-879-8882, 844-879-8882 if you'd like to contact them. And it's always a blessing to have David on the show, not only because he knows what he's talking about, but because he's my brother in Christ and my friend. And again, David, thanks again for spending the time with us.
Absolutely, Steve. My pleasure.
And we were talking about it's been a really up year for the stock market, 21%, and for precious metals, for gold, it's been up about 11%. And you said back in January, and he did, friends. That's why we can really trust David. He doesn't have a crystal ball any more than the rest of us, but he is very smart and very learned, so that all equals wisdom. And so you said back then we were going to have a bull market in both of these things. How unusual is it to see the stock market and the gold market do well at the same time for such a long period of time?
Well, in the 25 years I've been doing this, this is the second time we've seen this happen.
Wow.
And it relates to the debt is what's the driving factor for gold. Obviously, it's not a factor for stocks. Other things are driving the market in stocks. But I think you're going to continue to see some of a bull market in both until we come up with a debt reduction plan, if we ever do that. So I think right now you're going to see, a bull market in both environments. I'm going to talk more about that at the beginning of next year on your program, fine-tune that a little bit more, because we're going to be in a brand new year, and I think 2018 is going to be quite different than 2017.
Yeah, and I think it's wise. I mean, we shouldn't operate out of fear. Obviously, the Lord hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. But I think there is a tension out there. You've talked about a lot of big money managers and fund managers and venture capitalists and yourself that the other shoe definitely will drop. It's a matter of when, not if. And I think that's why we have to, don't get caught up in the euphoria of a great year in any market because these things fluctuate. They go up and down. And I think we still have to maintain somewhat of a skeptical and defensive mindset while taking advantage of the market while it lasts. But we can't assume it's always going to be like, because it hasn't ever been like that. It's never been, this unending trajectory up. There's always market corrections, and I think we're overdue for one at this point. Am I speaking some truth here?
Well, you're exactly right, Steve. Let's take you and I out of it on our opinions, because it might be self-serving or self-guided, and let's look to the central bank of all central banks. They issued a warning of a bubble booming and lurking to a burst in 2006 and 2007, and look what happened in 2008. I'm referring to the Bank of International Settlements, who's the mother of all banks. Since last time I was on your program, they put out a report warning the exact same things again. In fact, here's a segment from the report. Investors are ignoring warning signs that financial markets could be overheating and consumer debts are rising to unsustainable levels. The global body for central banks has warned in its quarterly financial health check. So I'm referring to the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS, and they are the only third-party monetary entity that has ever come out and said before the bubble burst, be careful, this is showing warning signs that it's going to make a turn and a popping of the bubble. They're saying the exact same thing now that they said in 2006 and 2007.
Yeah, and again, as we've talked about, we talk about wide-ranging issues here, not only nationally but internationally. And we talk some about, kind of the sweet spot of what Landmark Capital does with gold and precious metals, gold and silver. But again, as we look at balancing a portfolio, which is where you always end up taking us, we're looking at, on minimizing your risk, kind of an insurance policy, something to balance off the other side. We have stocks and bonds down here on the left. You have precious metals, specifically gold, over here on the right. And that's where we all end up talking about holding some gold as a way to balance out what the market does, as well as having something that the government can't come in and touch, which is why taking possession of it, whether it's in an IRA or just having gold coins or what have you, is a good idea. We've talked about the bail-ins, which have happened in multiple countries around the world. One thing that we haven't talked a lot about, David, which is Bitcoin. So most people are like, I don't even know what this is. Here's what I can tell you. On December 5th of 2016, Bitcoin was at $750.71. And today it's at $11,489.18, which makes it look like the greatest investment in the history of the world other than following Christ. So what's the deal with Bitcoin?
Well, it's a parabolic movement right now. It's something that you want to be probably very careful. And first of all, I'm not an owner of Bitcoin, but what Bitcoin is an alternative electronic currency called a cryptocurrency. And then so it does two different things, Steve. It's used as an investment, like buying a stock. I'm going to buy it low and sell high, the idea is. And obviously Bitcoin has fulfilled that because it started out 4 cents originally. Gee. Then the other thing that Bitcoin is used for is an alternative payment system where you can make payments on products and services that you buy to a store that is signed up for Bitcoin. I don't know if that one's going to stand the test of time because that goes against Article 1, Section 8, that only Congress has the right to coin money.
Coin money, right.
So I think, and there is a bill that's come out, it's not signed or passed or even voted upon, that is going to probably come after these types of exchanges, Bitcoin, and there's like over a dozen types of electronic currency, cryptocurrencies. So, because they've proven that you can actually launder money through a Bitcoin and other types of currencies. So that is definitely can be done because it's all anonymous.
Anonymous, right.
And so, that it has some benefits there if you're that type of a person. I'm not, you're not, and many of our listeners, your listeners are not. So just beware. I think that we're going to see some, not next week or next month, but I think you're going to see some government intervention in this area of using it as money. There's been some problems with it. It got hacked into in 2014 on one of the exchanges called Mt. Gox. The exchanges like the where it trades, the trading system that you can buy and sell on. So the systems got hacked, and Bitcoin lost $500 million in 2014 through stealing of hackers. What they did as a result of that, they did a bail-in. They took 36% of all Bitcoin holders' account money, and to suffice the $500 million loss. So most of the early investors, lost money in Bitcoin through that event. But there's been other exchanges that have been hacked into. One out of Hong Kong, Bitfinex was hacked by $72 million worth. So the only one out there, and I'm not endorsing it, is Coinbase, which is out of San Francisco. So so my advice is, if you're going to trade Bitcoin, do two things. One, be willing to trade with money that you can lose money on. Right. So be speculative, a small amount. And two, I would trade on a system that so far has never been hacked into, but understand it can get hacked into, and that's another red flag that you might face.
Certainly a red flag. We're talking to David Fisher from Landmark Capital. Their phone number, if you want to follow up with them, 844-879-8882. 844-879-8882 or landmarkgold.com. This is Steve Noble. It is Call to Action Radio with a special Money Monday. I've got a couple more questions on Bitcoin, then we'll move to the debt ceiling next. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's Steve Noble, Call to Action Radio. Great to be with you. By the way, spit it out there, Steve. The website, same as always, c2atoday.com, c2atoday.com. Or you can join us live on Facebook. Some of you in different markets around the country listen later in the day. Or one market, our friends in Tampa, they actually play the show the next morning at 11 a.m. So you're listening to the show right now in Tampa. Hello, Merry Christmas. And this show was actually yesterday at between 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And for my friends that are there in Jacksonville and Truth Radio down there in Jacksonville and St. Augustine's and Brunswick down in South Georgia, you're listening to it. It's tonight, I think between 8 and 9. I don't know if I'm between 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern or 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern. So you're listening to it later in the evening, whereas I'm on, it's 4:32 and 53 seconds Eastern Time. And just in case you want to be involved with us live, and we would love to be live on every channel, but that's not always possible. And if you'd like to join us, you can always do that live on Facebook. So just go to facebook.com/C2A Radio. That you'd be looking in the studio right now. I've got my friends here on Facebook Live, and we continue a kind of a sidebar conversation during the commercial breaks, and then we come back to the show topic during the show itself on the radio. But if you'd like to join us that way, facebook.com/C2A Radio. That's the letter C, the number 2, the letter A is in call to action. /C2A Radio, and you'll join us there on Facebook Live. And then, of course, we have David Fisher's definitely live today from Phoenix, where he's out there with his team at Landmark Capital. Landmarkgold.com is their website, or as always, the phone number, 844-879-8882. And we do Money Mondays. We do an update each Monday during the month, but then we do a full show the first Monday of the month. So Merry Christmas, because it is December, and it's always great to have David with us. David, again, thanks for being here.
Absolutely, Steve. My pleasure.
And so we were talking about the markets and what's going on with Bitcoin and everything. So Bitcoin, and I'm going to finish up. I got a couple more questions for you, if that's all right.
Sure.
So Bitcoin's value is really found in the people that are willing to use it. And there's a limited number of Bitcoins out there. Is that correct?
Correct. Go ahead.
No, so the value in and of itself is people wanting it and utilizing it. And is it capped out now? Are all the Bitcoins out there, or can you still buy them?
No, you still can buy them, and my understanding is you can actually mine Bitcoin. It does require a very powerful computer, and it takes time. and your electricity bill is going to go up, obviously, and so there's the trade-off there. You got to know what you're doing, and it's not an area of my expertise, so I don't want to really comment in general on specifics on that, but more generosity. But it's a very speculative thing. I found some more information of all the reports I have on Bitcoin. I found that bill. The U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee is currently tackling a bill, S1241, that aims to criminalize the intentional concealment of ownership or control of a financial account, which would be shutting down Bitcoin as using as money in the United States. So there's all other countries that are coming out, and the UK has commented on this, that the quote from the UK is ministers are launching a crackdown on the virtual currency, Bitcoin, amid growing concerns is being used to launder money and dodge tax. There are a few other countries that have come out. Yeah. Turkey says it doesn't, it's not compatible due to the Islamic reasons. The South Korea says that they're doing an investigation on various methods to better regulate the local Bitcoin market.
I knew you would drop the R word into this conversation sooner or later.
Yeah. So I think you're going to see governments getting involved in it at some level more than it is now, but I think it's not going away because it can be used as a stock, maybe not as a money, although it's being used as a money. And 4 days ago, a Brooklyn, New York-based platform that manages real estate for occupancy says you can now pay for your rent on their app and choose to use payment in Bitcoin.
Wow, how about that? Yeah, so as always, let the buyer beware and proceed with caution, but certainly information out there that you can check that out. And you never know. I mean, this is the new frontier, and I talk about the Internet. And say that www, I really think it stands for the Wild Wild West. That seems to be what the what's happening on the Internet. But obviously, it's an interesting thing to talk about. It is here. I think digital currency is here to stay, and so it's better for us to be informed than not. The debt ceiling is here again. So should we be concerned about it? I mean, when's the last time that we've actually seen our government take its debt seriously? So the debt ceiling to me is just about as effective as a yield sign for a lot of people. They kind of roll right through it.
We're going to probably see some sort of a California stop here happening. The deadline is coming up on Friday at midnight. So, what was passed way back in early September, when President Trump just reminded people that met with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to strike a deal with the hurricane relief. They've tacked on this on the back of that. It's an extension of the debt ceiling. Now that is coming due. What's been happening recently is the unfortunate Democrats have not wanted to come to meet with President Trump. That happened last week. And so they stuck their heels in. And since then, President Trump tweeted saying there is no deal. They don't want to talk. And I'm paraphrasing his tweet because of time. So since then, now the two have reconsidered. So Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi once again will meet with President Trump this Thursday, along with Paul Ryan and McConnell, to go over raising the debt ceiling. But in the interim, there is a bill that wants to fund the government for just a couple of weeks in case they can't get the negotiations taken care of Thursday night, because if they don't do it within one day, then we'll have a government shutdown and possibly a default, which is pretty much the last minute. The bill has not been voted on or passed, so but the disparity between the debt ceiling is that, they always tack something on it. They just want to have a clean, just talk about the debt ceiling. It has to be something added, like hurricane relief was added before. Right, this is now about DACA, which is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is a whole big can of worms. And how it was
But we have till March to deal with DACA, so I don't think that's going to go anywhere on the tax reform bills that's being
well, they have till March until it stops, but right. Democrats want to put that in the debt ceiling.
Right, of course.
They're using that as a negotiating tool, saying we will raise the debt ceiling as long as we can actually get DACA taken care of now. Republicans don't want to do that.
Yeah, to me, that's a great reason to not take care of DACA and to call them out on it, because they're going to raise the debt ceiling because they want to have more credit that they can use to push their programs. I mean, everybody up on the Hill, except for maybe a handful of them, are completely drunk on our money.
The side that they're not talking about, Steve, is let's cut spending. Yeah, it's great to have tax cuts,
Right? Yeah.
and it's not black and white in that. But cutting spending is a black and white deal, and that's what they should be focusing on. But they're not focusing on that. That's why we have the problems that we have.
That's exactly right, and we'll see. But yes, we have a Republican president who's done many good things, but he doesn't have a problem with debt. He very rarely talks about our national debt, and he wants to pull the trigger and spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. And again, the question is, how are you going to pay for all this stuff? Because we act like we can live on the Titanic for years and years and years, but the only way we're going to survive all of this is we're going to have to switch to living on a shrimp boat where the government's just not going to be able to do as much as we're used to. I just don't know what it's ever going to take for them to actually stand. Do you actually think, David, in our lifetime, we're going to see Congress take the debt seriously?
No, because it's not mathematically possible to get this thing under control, and so we have to do some other ways, and we have to put a smoke and mirrors on it. Unfortunately, that's how the government is operating. Just the tax bill relief, $1.5 trillion is going to be added to the national debt if this bill gets passed as is, according to the Senate, according to the Budget Committee, and another $5 to $6 trillion on top of that just for tuition, and then $1 million or $1 trillion of infrastructure. So we're talking about $9 trillion in the next decade without any other bills being passed. So let's round it up to 10 because interest rates are going to go up. So we're going to put $10 more trillion on the national debt in the next decade, and that's a conservative number.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be higher.
Just mind-boggling. Just in case, and just to give everybody a taste of what's happening, I mean, literally right now as we're talking, let me just, this will take me not very long, David. Let me just do this. 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000, 90,000, $100,000. We just went $100,000 more in debt. I'm looking at the U.S. debt clock, usdebtclock.org, and it's $10,000 about every 2 seconds, every 3 seconds, that we're going further into debt. And so I look at I taught this last week in my civics class with all these bright-eyed and bushy-tailed 14 to 17-year-olds, and I showed them this thing, and you could have heard a pin drop, David. They have never seen it. They are completely unaware. And I said, you know those numbers that are going up? Just think of that as somebody's credit card, and guess whose credit card it is? And all of a sudden, all these kids look at me and go, is that ours? And I said, yep. And so we're spending your money. What does that make us? And then I had all kinds of great answers. What does that make us in the current adulthood world versus what we're doing to our posterity, which is immoral, to say the least? We're talking to David Fisher, several different things to talk about the PetroYuan. You're sitting there going, what is that? You need to know what that is, and you need to know what's about to happen on the world stage because it definitely could affect the rest of us. That's why we do Money Monday updates with our good friend David Fisher from Landmark Capital. LandmarkGold.com is their website. This is Steve Noble. We'll be right back. Welcome back with Steve Noble. It's Call to Action Radio. Great to be with you. The website, as always. And by the way, if you want to check out shows from the past or you just missed a show, like last Thursday, did a great Theology Thursday with Danny Akin, Dr. Danny Akin, who's the president of Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, the biggest seminary on the East Coast, one of the preeminent seminaries on the face of the planet, really. And last Thursday, we did a kind of a Christmas-themed Theology Thursday. We do that every week and kind of dive into the deeper end of the pool there and understanding the Bible, but looked at why did God have to come as a man, take on human flesh as Jesus, in order to save us, in order to deal with our sin? So that's called the incarnation, and so that's what we did Theology Thursday on from last week. And then other times we have Danny on. He's on usually once a month. We just go all over the Bible, all kinds of different questions, theological questions and stuff. But if you want to go back and see shows we've done previously, it's very visual on the website, c2atoday.com. So you can just go right there on the homepage. You slide down, you'll see the podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, all kinds of other podcast software apps that you have on your phone. I can get to it through a number of them. And you can subscribe for free and grab past shows. That's commercial free, so you're just listening to literally the 40 minutes of the radio show itself. But if you want to join us on Facebook Live, that's facebook.com/C2A Radio, as in called to action, the number 2, C2A Radio at Facebook, and then you'd be right here in the studio with me, myself and I, and the Holy Spirit, and be a part of the show. But, of course, our good friend David Fisher from Landmark Capital is with us today. If you want to get some more information from them, 844-879-8882 is their number, or landmarkgold.com. And, again, David, I wanted to, before we get to the end of the show and start running out of time, you've got several great white paper and informational papers out there. Can you remind everybody what's available right now and how they can take advantage of that?
Well, we have a piece of literature called Changing Directions and Changing Times, which talks about the reasons that gold has moved and silver has moved so much in the past 15, 20 years here. It gives all the fundamentals of that. And then we have another white paper called The Coming Bail-In, which is what has happened in 8 countries in Europe, 9 countries in the world, and how the United States has set up similar guidelines and laws have been passed to do a bail-in in our country. And then we have another white paper on if you have a IRA or 401k, how you roll over your IRA or 401k into physical gold and silver and take possession of that without a tax liability. And beyond that, we have a monthly electronic newsletter that this month is called The Fed's Influence, a Benefit or a Bubble, which talks about the bond market and also a year-end discount, which is we can talk about too if we have a moment. So we have a monthly newsletter. Nothing is charged for anything. We don't give out your name, address, email, and you only get 1 email a month from us, which is that newsletter.
Exactly right, and I should know because I've been getting that one for a while, which has been very beneficial, and thank you for that. PetroYuan, which sounds like we're switching languages. We're not, but let's just, for people that aren't familiar with that, David, remind us of what a PetroYuan is, what's going on there, an update, and why it matters.
Well, petro is oil, and yuan is the Chinese currency. At one point, how do you become the worldwide reserve or compete against the U.S. dollar? You got to be involved in oil somehow, and that's what actually made the dollar as strong as it has been used, is because we had the petrodollar, which was created in 1974 with our country and OPEC. So all oil contracts were denominated in dollars until recently. Now in 2014, China started buying oil and making payment in their own currency, and also made payment in rubles to Russia. And now 17 countries currently are joining forces. But China wants to make a major launch, and they are launching sometime before the end of the year in September. They said it will be before the end of the year. They're launching the PetroYuan, which now countries can buy oil and sell oil outside of using the dollar. It's avoiding the dollar, as another currency is being used called the yuan. And the ironic thing is that yuan, you can convert that to gold. So this is kind of back what happened in the 1940s, where you could convert the U.S. dollar into gold. Countries did that. This is a very appealing thing for countries, and this is going to get launched here before the beginning of next year. This is happening, and it will compete against the U.S. dollar, unfortunately.
And Trump was tweeting about this not that long ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, he said do the launch. There's an IPO called Aramco. Aramco is the state-owned Saudi Arabia company that produces oil and refines it. And Aramco, Saudi Arabia's gone through a recession because oil dropped from $80, $90 a barrel down to 30-some, and now we're in the $55, $58 range. So they went through a recession. They need money. They're raising the money through doing an IPO, initial public offering, Aramco. That's going to come out the latter part of next year. $100 billion initially is what they said. $300 billion is now. And President Trump says, why don't you do your IPO through the New York Stock Exchange? Because whatever exchange it goes through is going to be beneficial to that country. Canada's got involved. They wanted to launch in Toronto. The UK wants to launch it in London. But China is probably going to do a private placement, which is they go to and strike a deal with Saudi Arabia, because they've been meeting recently with Saudi Arabia. And so it's an internal thing, and because they want to buy the whole deal, and it's about 5% is what the numbers percentage-wise works out to be. So this would be a good deal for China, and done a lot of research on it. Actually, Saudi Arabia has actually helped build 2 processing refineries in China. One's getting ready to break ground here real soon. One's already been breaking ground. And so we're talking about a big partnership happening between Saudi Arabia. So this would be a natural, and obviously the United States doesn't want this PetroYuan to be launched because it will be detrimental to the dollar.
Yeah, and I think the days of assuming America is the big dog up on the porch, we need to kind of come to grips with the reality that in this very international marketplace that we live in, we aren't sitting up there all by ourselves anymore, especially financially. We're not the financial super. I mean, we're still obviously a huge consumer and a major player on the world stage. But between Russia and China and Saudi Arabia, and there's things going on in other parts of the world that we need to be aware of, because these things will have a direct impact on us and our investments and even our regular kind of daily cost of living. So to be ignorant of this stuff is to be irresponsible. So you mentioned a couple times about this kind of, I guess we're calling it a year-end discount on precious metals. This isn't like, hey, come to the Blue Light Special at Kmart. This is something that happens in the precious metals arena every year. So remind us what that's about here between now and the end of the year.
Well, 22 out of 25 years of my career it's happened, and it is generated because wholesalers who are people have to pay a tax on their inventory, their physical holdings. Instead of doing that, they would rather sell it at a discount and create a positive experience for themselves, cash flow in January. So because of that, there is a discount that happens, and we at Landmark Capital pass the savings off to people. The discount is not the same every year, and it's different products every year. It's based upon inventory and market conditions. I can confirm that this year there is definitely a discount, and it starts first week in December as the earliest I've seen it, and ends the last week in January as the latest. Normally it's between Christmas and New Year's, but I have the inside scoop from the vice president of the largest company wholesaler in the world. I talk to him every day. That tells you a little bit about my relationship. Yeah. We are having a discount, and it's going to happen starting the latter part of next week. So if they want to learn more about it, because there's different products that do different things, we want to make sure they're in the right product for them, that they want to accomplish their goals. They need to call our company, and we'll set up a 5 to 10 minute strategy, kind of like what we did with you, Steve.
Yeah.
The same thing. It's very very enlightening, educational,
very
and
helpful.
You get to pick what you want to put in your portfolio. So if they're interested, there's no obligation. Call my company, learn about it, and we can put you on the list if you want to proceed further on that.
And what's that contact information again, David?
They can call us at 844-879-8882, or they can go to our website at landmarkgold.com.
Excellent. As always, thanks. It was great spending time with you. Thanks for helping us stay up to date on this stuff, and we look forward to a Money Monday update next week. And make sure you tell everybody there at the office at Landmark Capital we said Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Steve, your family, and all the listeners.
Absolutely. Thanks, pal. We'll talk to you again real soon. And I want to change gears here. We've got about a minute and a half left on the show, about 2 minutes, and I wanted to finish up a little bit early today on a Money Monday with David, because there's something going on tomorrow at the U.S. Supreme Court that you absolutely have to be aware of, and we all need to be praying over this. This is a massive deal. I don't know that I would call it as massive as the gay marriage case, Obergefell, which, of course, was a train wreck a couple years ago, but this is a massive one. It's finally the gay wedding cake controversy will be heard at the Supreme Court tomorrow. Oral arguments at 1:30. Of course, Alliance Defending Freedom is standing up for Charlie Craig, and not Charlie Craig. It's Charlie Craig and David Mullins of Denver, who went after the guy, Jack Phillips, who owns the Masterpiece Cake Shop. So this was, does a Christian have a right to not partake in the communication involved with serving a gay wedding, which would mean that would violate, hopefully, you know the scriptures, that would violate your deeply held religious convictions. And so that's where this has been happening. Whether you're a cake baker or a photographer or you own a facility, it's one thing. And none of these people, none of these Christians with these facilities would say, we don't serve gay people here. It's never been that. It is like the black man that owns the T-shirt shop, and the KKK guy comes in and says, hey, I want to have, I need to buy 50 shirts. I need to have 50 shirts that say eliminate the black race. Can you print these up for me? And of course, you would never force the black man to print those shirts for obvious reasons. This is the same thing. This is the first time this particular type of case has made it to the Supreme Court. Massive implications. So we need to be praying between now and tomorrow at 1:30. Oral arguments usually last for an hour to an hour and a half, so between 1:30 and 3 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow, December 5th. We need to be in prayer over this. If you want to join me on Facebook Live, we're going to pray for this right now when the show is over, facebook.com/C2A Radio. Jump over to Facebook Live and join me as we pray for that case. This has massive religious freedom implications, and we need to be in prayer about it. This is Steve Noble of Call to Action Radio, and God willing, I'll talk to you again real soon.